Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Cult Master Qin, this is True Heaven Palace. Suddenly, Qin Mu heard Liu Zhenqing's voice. He was slightly stunned when he saw a bunch of black coffins escorting the golden god coffin inside. Liu family's mother and daughter were sitting on their own coffins. The little girl put down her hawthorn candy with a smile and said, "True Heaven Palace. A real celestial palace." Astonished, Qin Mu cried out, "Your meaning? This celestial palace fell from the heavens, it's not a fake." Liu Zhenqing jumped out of her coffin after stabbing the hawthorn candy into it. She climbed onto the golden coffin and peeled off one talisman after another. "Quickly move aside, the old thing is coming out. Keep the chain properly." While she spoke, the golden coffin suddenly opened up and a god's aura burst forth with a heart-gripping shout. A majestic figure rushed out toward the golden light. Boom! A loud explosion came from the back of the palace, and a chewing sound could be heard. Liu Zhenqing was extremely nervous and instructed the people of Liu family, "Quickly pull the chains back. Faster! Drag that old thing back. Don't be scared, the white tiger bead is in his mouth so he'll be suppressed by it. Faster! Faster!" Chains rattled as the experts of Liu family quickly pulled them back from their numerous black coffins. After a moment, a tall and sturdy corpse of a god was dragged back. It was struggling with all its might, trying to break free. Liu Zhenqing and Liu Ruian went forward and exerted all their strength to pull the god's corpse back into the coffin. Liu Zhenqing climbed onto the head of the god's corpse and punched its nose furiously with her small fists while shouting, "Spit it out, quickly spit it out." The cheeks of the god's corpse were bulging, so it was obvious that something was hidden inside them. The god's corpse looked at the daring little girl as though it wanted to eat her up. However, its four limbs were chained so it couldn't move. The item in the corpse's mouth was the white tiger bead which had been swallowed along with the expert of True Heaven Palace that had held it. But once the white tiger bead had gone into its mouth, it realized how terrifying it was. The white tiger bead not only didn't go down its throat, but even almost assimilated the god's corpse. Liu Zhenqing beat the nose of the god's corpse until it was all bloody. The god's corpse finally couldn't resist any longer and opened its mouth to spit out the white tiger bead along with a puff of corpse poison toward Liu Zhenqing. Bang! The coffin closed, and Liu Zhenqing quickly pasted the sealing talismans back before picking up the white tiger bead from the floor. She beamed with joy before jumping back onto her own small coffin and pulling out the hawthorn candy for another lick. She smiled at Qin Mu and said, "Brother Qin, we are going back. Come find us at God Burial Valley to play with us when you're free." Qin Mu laughed loudly and waved at them. "Let's go." The coffin flipped over with a bang and covered the little girl inside. Liu Zhenqing's dull voice, however, still reached the outside, and it sounded full of pride. "No more fighting, return to God Burial Valley. Our Liu family is not here to shatter the authority of True Heaven Palace. With the white tiger bead, our Liu family's God Burial Valley can also become a sacred ground of West Earth." Numerous black coffins escorted the golden coffin in their withdrawal from True Heaven Palace. Little sister Liu Zhenqing is extraordinary and might just be able to create a corpse sacred ground. Qin Mu continued to head further into True Heaven Palace while thinking to himself, "However, I shouldn't call her little sister since her age should be similar to that of her mother Liu Ruian. They should both be 400 to 500 years old." In the depths of True Heaven Palace, there was a spirit treasure that had an astonishing power. Vermilion bird bead incinerated everything through which its true fire passed. Only the palace of True Heaven Palace itself was left untouched. There were people from the influential families pouring forth towards the power of Vermilion bird bead. It was evident that they planned to take hold of it before Xiong Xiu and her daughter could take it for themselves. So it's Cult Master Qin. From another huge hall, Eternal Peace Imperial preceptor walked out with a rare smile. He nodded to Qin Mu in acknowledgement. Qin Mu walked forward and asked in doubt, "Imperial preceptor, with your current abilities, stealing the 3 great spirit beads isn't difficult, yet you disregard the treasures of True Heaven Palace. What exactly are you searching for? The history. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked to another palace while saying leisurely, "The treasures of True Heaven Palace belong to West Earth and I won't fight over them. To me, even though the treasures are tempting, the history of True Heaven Palace is the true wealth. Cult Master Qin, there's no need to fight over those things and struggle for power. Follow me and let's witness the history of True Heaven Palace." His intention was for the youth to come with him. Imperial Preceptor's setup is extraordinary. If I was greedy for the treasures of True Heaven Palace, wouldn't you despise me? Qin Mu said. He followed Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to the other palace. True Heaven Palaces were grand and majestic. Even though the war was still ongoing with all kinds of divine arts and spirit weapons flying in the sky, the ground level was perfectly fine. Dao Sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, Little Jade Capital were all losers. But even they recorded their history, so how could the winner not immortalize their own victorious history? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor walked into a hall where numerous disciples of Yu family hid. They immediately attacked, but Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor just waved his hand and their abundant strength seemed to have lost meaning. They crashed against the four walls of the palace, unable to move. I have already seen the history recorded by Dao Sect, Little Jade Capital, and Great Thunderclap Monastery. Now I would like to see the history written by the winner. Imperial Preceptor waved his hand again, and the numerous women of Yu family that were pressed against the walls couldn't stop themselves from moving to the side, so the murals behind them were revealed. Qin Mu looked at the murals and saw a painting with a god descending from the sky on a cluster of palaces. The god looked somewhat similar to Bago. In the second painting, Bago came to meet a female god which was on equal footing with him and functioned as his rival. She's none other than the founder of True Heaven Palace, True Heaven Old Mother. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor expression became one of deep thought. Since she was able to stand on an equal footing with Bago, she shouldn't have been killed by a single strike from me. It's a little strange. Qin Mu was slightly stunned when he recalled the wooden god statue he had seen in the desert. Its face was similar to the appearance of True Heaven Old Mother. He looked to the next painting, but Bago's figure was no longer there. The third painting was of True Heaven Old Mother using vermilion bird bead to transform the ground into a barren desert filled with fierce flames. The flaming desert. Qin Mu narrowed his eyes. The amount of magic power required to change an area of tens of thousands of miles into a flaming desert was simply terrifying. Cult Master, do you think someone with her abilities would be killed by me in one strike? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked. Qin Mu shivered. She's still alive. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor nodded. The True Heaven Old Mother I killed in one strike was most probably just a god statue. Her path of nature creation has myriads of changes and she could even awaken mountains and rivers to become moving lifeforms, so creating a fake body couldn't be considered hard for her. Could she be somewhere around here? Qin Mu had an eerie feeling. If True Heaven Old Mother really still hid in True Heaven Palace, she was hiding while they were standing right under the spotlight. If True Heaven Old Mother was to land a sneak attack on them, who could block her? Qin Mu didn't know if Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could block her, but he himself definitely couldn't. Even if True Heaven Old Mother couldn't kill Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, she could definitely kill him. Is she targeting him or me? Qin Mu blinked. The threat Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor posed was even bigger when before, as he had cultivated Divine Bridge. He had gotten rid of Bago and her fake body, so by right, he should be her target. But in the flaming desert, True Heaven Old Mother's god statues had already laid their hands on Qin Mu numerous times. On top of that, the invasion of True Heaven Palace had a lot to do with him. Compared to Imperial Preceptor, True Heaven Old Mother's hatred for Qin Mu should be even deeper. No matter what, I need to be by Imperial Preceptor's side. I can't take a step away from him. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stretched his hand out and moved it to the side. Numerous women on the wall slid to the side and revealed the fourth mural. It recorded a battle between True Heaven Old Mother, Sun Ship, and Moon Ship. That battle had been initiated by True Heaven Old Mother when she attacked Great Ruins. It attracted the Moon and Sun ships, then retreated toward the flaming desert where she managed to destroy them. The sight of the battle on the mural was extremely majestic. The huge land ships brought the suns and moons that flew in the sky. Sun and moon guardians stood on the huge ships with towering physiques, but their faces were wretched. It was clear from one glance that they were evil people. Yet it wasn't only true Heaven Old Mother that fought against them, there were also some other gods in the sky. However, on the mural, those gods were drawn very tiny, while true Heaven Old Mother was valiant and strong, with an indomitable spirit. The other gods were simply infants in front of her. Is true Heaven Old Mother really so strong? Qin Mu couldn't help doubting what he saw. Let me tell you a story so you will understand why true Heaven Old Mother isn't strong at all. One day, the emperor brought me and the ministers out for a hunt. When we caught our prey, the emperor ordered a painter to do a painting, and that painter had also drawn the emperor to be that large, said Imperial preceptor. He raised his right hand and made a gesture of extending 2 fingers to show the size of himself in the painting. And I was this small. The emperor was indomitable while the ministers and I were all very tiny. Among them, I was the tiniest. On top of that, when the painter drew me, he drew me to be very wretched and fiendish, with a cunning and sinister expression. The emperor wasn't satisfied, so he ordered the painter to redraw it, but it ended up the same. Thus, the emperor dismissed him, telling him to scram back home. Qin Mu understood what he meant and smiled. The person who painted this mural was bootlicking true Heaven Old Mother. She shouldn't be stronger than you, otherwise, she wouldn't have resorted to using fake bodies to attack you. True Heaven Old Mother's abilities should be very strong, but her battle power should have a big flaw. Her magic power is extremely strong, but her spells are also in the path of all things having spirit and all things having soul. If she doesn't show herself, I can't do anything to her. But if she shows herself, she's dead. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had a lot of confidence, but he suddenly changed the topic. He seemed to be warning Qin Mu when he said, "There are bootlickers beside the emperor, so how can there be none beside others with power?" However, these kind of people aren't scary, it's their thoughts that are scary. The painter drew me and the ministers as tiny figures, and it is understandable, but he shouldn't have drawn me to be sinister and cunning, since it involved his personal loathing. He wanted to use the chance to bootlick and influence the emperor's view toward me, to make the emperor think that I'm sinister and cunning. He wanted to use it to get rid of me and stop the reform. Putting bootlicking and a stab in the back together was too much. He looked at Qin Mu with a smile that was not really a smile. Cult Master has an important position, and even the emperor can't match up to your authority sometimes. You need to be careful of people who hide daggers behind their farts. Qin Mu was between laughter and tears. Hiding daggers behind their farts. Imperial Preceptor was both refined and vulgar at the same time. When he was refined, he could harangue with death and butcher, but when he was vulgar, he could even say phrases like hiding daggers behind farts. However, he was speaking the truth. It was indeed not hard to encounter such people in life that would stab their competitors in the back with flattery while harboring unfathomable motives. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's warning was very right. On the mural, true Heaven Old Mother is assisted by other gods, but where did they come from? Qin Mu examined the mural and inspected the pictures of the other gods in it, trying to recognize their faces. He suddenly saw one person which looked familiar. That's Jade Sovereign. Could the others also be the gods of high heavens? No, they shouldn't all be gods of high heavens. He recognized another face. He took out a scroll from his Daotai sack and gently unfolded it. He placed it side by side for comparison and checked the god in the painting again. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was slightly stunned. Isn't this the painting of paying respect to the soul that Cult Master drew? It is. Qin Mu raised his head to examine the mural. The divine art of paying respect to the soul that Pan Gong So uses is extremely strange. When he pays respect to a soul, an apparition of a god appears behind him. I painted it here. Imperial Preceptor, please take a look. Doesn't this god in my painting look similar to that god? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked back and forth a few times, then nodded. Doubt appeared on Qin Mu's face, and he went into deep thought. That god of Pangongso had once appeared in this world and was the same as True Heaven Old Mother. One of them founded True Heaven Palace and the other one founded Roland's Golden Palace. In that case, is he still in this world? If he is still alive. Chills ran down his back even though he wasn't cold. Pangongso's divine art killed to whoever he paid respect. If the god himself was to execute it, who could withstand him paying his respect? The mural here only records the history of True Heaven Old Mother and not what I wanted. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor shook his head and walked out of the hall. If True Heaven Palace is really part of the Celestial Palaces, there should be even more ancient history recorded on the murals and not just the history of True Heaven Palace. There must be another hall for older history. Qin Mu followed him out, and only then did the women of Yu family fall to the ground, regaining their movement. The battle outside was still continuing and the situation was extremely messy. All of the influential families were fighting over Vermilion Bird Bead. They were hindering each other and making dirty moves. The power of Vermilion Bird Bead was unusually strong and not any inferior to that of Green Dragon Bead. It was one of the 4 great spirit treasures of True Heaven Palace, so it naturally invoked quite a fight among people who wanted to obtain it. Even though women held the authority in West Earth, their internal conflicts and power struggle were no inferior to those in Eternal Peace. Qin Mu followed Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor to the main hall of True Heaven Palace and saw that the murals there were different from the other palaces. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood in front of one and looked at it calmly. The corners of his eyes suddenly twitched and fear spread across his face. Qin Mu looked at the mural and saw the imposing celestial heavens. There was a person dressed like the Heavenly Emperor inviting gods for a banquet. There were countless of them who chose to attend. Earth Count? Qin Mu's heart trembled violently when he saw Earth Count with horns on his head among the gods. In the painting, Earth Count's position was extremely high, yet his face still couldn't be distinguished. And he wasn't the only one like that. That meant that there were many existences that were like Earth Count. In the painting, the gods were all frozen in different poses, drawn so vividly that they looked like they were about to step out and come to life. This showed that the painter who had painted the mural was exceptionally brilliant. Qin Mu's gaze swept through the gods, but he found no sign of True Heaven Old Mother or even Ba. Could it be that True Heaven Old Mother wasn't even born back then? The corners of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes were still trembling when he croaked out, "This is the true Celestial Palace, the true Celestial Palace." It's no wonder that even founding Emperor era was wiped out. Qin Mu grabbed his hand, and it was actually shaking. Fear and hesitation could be seen in the depths of the middle-aged man's vacant eyes. Imperial Preceptor is scared by a painting. Qin Mu laughed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor struggled free, but his voice was still hoarse. Aren't you scared? Don't you see how many gods there are in this celestial palace? Don't you see Earth Count among them too? Don't you understand that the destruction of founding Emperor era was probably due to the gods in this celestial palace? Despair appeared on his face and he laughed. I thought I could abolish the degenerates and return the world a clear heaven and earth. I hoped to prevent people from being deceived anymore and break the gods in the temples and in their hearts so they would have the courage to fight the heavens, but isn't all that just a joke? Cult Master Qin, you don't understand anything. If I continue with the reform, Eternal Peace Empire will end up the same. Reform, He was completely disheartened and fell into a daze. He waved his hands while saying, I'm not going to high heavens anymore. When I return to eternal peace, I will bring my wife into seclusion. Cult Master, you continue being the Cult Master. As for the reform, don't touch it again. He turned around to walk out of the hall with a bleak expression. He had lost all his courage to continue fighting. Heavenly King, you just now asked me if I understand or not. Let me answer you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stopped in his tracks. I know. Qin Mu's smile was more radiant than ever before. I'm even more deeply involved than you. The founding emperor also had the surname Qin, and the orphan of the eradicated founding emperor empire is right in front of you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor trembled. He turned around to look at him, his words coming out in a stutter. You. Qin Mu showed him his white teeth as he smiled radiantly. My name might be fake, but my surname isn't. Founding Emperor's Qin is my Qin. If I'm not scared, what should you be scared of? Heavenly King, I suddenly have an idea, help me grind my inkstone. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was still in shock from Qin Mu's words and didn't understand what he meant. Qin Mu took out his brush and threw the inkstone at him. He looked with interest at the painting which had inflicted so much damage to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor. After a moment, his eyes lit up and he found the crux of the matter. With a smile, he asked, "Is the ink ready?" Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was in a daze, barely having caught the inkstone. Qin Mu smiled and spoke once more. Heavenly King, this isn't like you. Where's the saint that appears once every 500 years? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor took in a deep breath and threw out all the thoughts in his mind, focusing on grinding ink. Qin Mu soaked the brush full of ink and placed a few strokes at the bottom right corner of the mural. After he was done, he smiled and said, "Help me wash my brush." You? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could barely hold back his anger. Founding Emperor era ended over 20,000 years ago, and the 100th heir of Founding Emperor might not be any more respected than a farmer. If you make a fool out of me, I'll create trouble for you and make sure they haunt you forever. Qin Mu laughed loudly and said, "We will leave after you finish washing." Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor washed the brush with dedication. He was serious in everything he did and was never careless. Qin Mu put away his brush and inkstone before grabbing the middle-aged man's hand. He dragged him toward the mural with a smile. "Let me bring you to a meeting, the banquet of the celestial heavens." The two of them hurled themselves against the mural and vanished as they entered the painting. The scenery in front of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes suddenly changed. When the light came back, they had come to the celestial palaces. They were majestic, and sacred mountains extended far into the distance. Divine light shone upon the boundless world. Is this the world in the painting? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was incomparably astonished. If they were in the world in the painting, wasn't it a bit too vast? He looked into the distance, but there was no end to the celestial palaces. Gods filled the sky above. There were some that were imposing, some that were divine, and some that transcended worldliness. However, most of the gods were walking to and fro, searching and calling their friends while exchanging cups of wine and drinking together in a large group. Qin Mu had brought Imperial Preceptor into the painting and the banquet of the celestial heavens. There were long corridors around them that were like bridges, flying rainbows, sun and moon hanging above the pavilion, and lanterns with flaming divine birds inside that acted as candles and were giving off heat. There were also goddesses playing strings and exotic wind instruments. Some women were dancing on the lotus leaves while a deluge of heavenly flowers fell around them. Some of the gods that were drunk stumbled left and right, raising their wine jars while teasing goddesses that avoided them from shyness. It was too much for Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's eyes to take in. They were located at the center of the banquet, with countless gods in their surroundings. In the distance, light from the sacred mountain shone. Earthcount was not far from them, and on his head were the horns of the 9 bends. He sat motionlessly with flames circling under his body like an abyss. There were a few more extremely imposing existences high above. Their faces were blurry, but the awe-inspiring feeling they gave off was no inferior. Imperial Preceptor, you are now like a country bumpkin, similar to me when I first entered Border Dragon City. Qin Mu laughed loudly and suddenly took a pot of wine from a goddess beside him. He raised it to his mouth to take a hearty drink. The goddess grew furious at him and shouted out, "Where is this brat from? This is the sacred wine for the high gods, so how can you touch it? Pesky woman." Qin Mu raised a leg and kicked that goddess away. He grabbed another pot of wine that flew up from the plate and stuffed it into Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's hands. He then jumped onto a jade table in front of a god high above to drink heartily. That god was furious and raised his palm to slap him, but Qin Mu raised his own hand and pulled out his sword, cutting off an arm. He laughed loudly and flipped the jade table while shouting, "Poems of the sun and moon with wine of the immortals, hero of the land flying up the 9 heavens. Kai? The head of the god from high above was sliced off, and Qin Mu barged into another hall, creating a ruckus in the heavens. Countless gods were furious and attacked him. Sword lights flashed in Qin Mu's hand, and he fought off all the high gods. He cut off their heads, which rolled to Earth Count's side. Qin Mu hung them on Earth Count's horn and laughed. Banished from the highly respected registry of Penglai, adorning precious clothing in front of the Jade Hall of Fangjong. Earth Count exploded with fury and his body shook, instantly changing into a divine body that was 100,000 feet tall. Sacred fire spread out beneath his feet. Qin Mu executed his sword pellet, and 8,000 swords circled around Earth Count. They swirled to join into spiral sword form and sliced the deity into countless pieces. Qin Mu rubbed his hands, and the flying swords swept out in all directions like long dragons. His excitement rose as he killed and recited loudly, meeting the dragon's body of 1,000 feet, yet still remaining in the layers of phoenix's feathers. Countless gods swarmed toward him like a flood that threatened to drown him. Divine light soared into the heavens, and Qin Mu rushed out from a sea of cut-off limbs. He strummed on his swords and sang, abandoning all restraint. 1,000 men with nowhere to look, 10,000 gods won't tolerate the force when looking back. Imperial Preceptor, let me break the gods in your heart. Eternal peace. Imperial Preceptor laughed loudly, and his earlier dispiritedness was washed away. His spirit rose up once more, and he shouted loudly, "The gods in my heart, why should you be the one to destroy them?" He walked over with sword light scattering from his hand. His battle power was higher than that of Qin Mu, and everywhere he passed gods fell. In Numinous Sky Hall, countless gods and devils swarmed forward to attack them. Qin Mu and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor stood side by side, massacring everyone in front of the heavenly gate. After a moment, the corpses of the gods and devils filled the entire mountain. Yet there were still endless gods rushing over at the two with shouts demanding slaughter. How many more of them do we have to kill? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor asked in a shout. Guard the gate, I'll kill Celestial Emperor. You go. Qin Mu agreed. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor rushed into Numinous Sky Hall where gods' corpses lay strewn all over the ground. Boom! Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor fell backward and smashed the wall of the hall beside Qin Mu, and the youth jumped in shock. The gods around them were clearly very weak, so the painter who had drawn them was clearly lacking in ability. It resulted in a reality where even Qin Mu was able to massacre the gods. However, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had been sent back by the Celestial Emperor. Qin Mu blinked and realized that their situation was pretty bad. This painter must have also been a bootlicker. He used all his best techniques on the Celestial Emperor, so he is much more powerful than the rest of the gods. Qin Mu was very clear how powerful a painting could be, since he had learned from death. The power of the painting came not only from the painter's technique, but also where it had been used to the greatest effect. The greater the painting technique, the stronger the painting would be. Of course, this depended on the hard work of the painter. The one who had done the mural had painted the other gods and devils carelessly, not spending a lot of effort on them, so they weren't strong at all. Even an existence such as Earth Count was only SOSO. But it was even more important to know who was the target. For example, when Def had painted the young village chief, that picture of sword god carrying his sword had held astonishing power. When the mural's painter had painted Celestial Emperor, he had to have put in a lot of effort to capture the grace of Celestial Emperor, so it was so strong that it was even able to blow Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor back. Qin Mu was slightly worried. He had brought Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor into the painting to break his fear, but if he couldn't even defeat the Celestial Emperor in the painting, it might completely crush his confidence in himself. But at that moment, when Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor slid down from the wall, he rushed to his feet blazing with fighting spirit that hadn't diminished in the slightest. After a moment, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor flew backward once more. Qin Mu sent his 8,000 swords to massacre the gods swarming over and looked at Imperial Preceptor who was on the wall. He saw that his face was all swollen and blooded. This is troublesome. The power of this Celestial Emperor in the painting is probably even higher than that of a normal god. Just as he thought that, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor rushed back in again. Bang! Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was sent back once more. This happened over and over again. In front of Numinous Sky Hall's heavenly gate, the corpses of the gods and devils had already piled up, yet Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor still rushed at the Celestial Emperor at the top of Numinous Sky Hall time after time. He was beaten back again and again, his appearance growing more miserable with each time he was sent back. Qin Mu's gaze flickered as he prepared 5 Thunderpop while thinking to himself, even if I have to risk my life to blow up this place, I can't let the Celestial Emperor in the painting to completely defeat Imperial Preceptor. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor rushed forward once more and all shouts of slaughter stopped. The expression of all the gods outside Numinous Sky Palace filled with terror, and they turned back to flee. Qin Mu was stunned. He turned back to take a look and saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor standing behind him with Celestial Emperor's head. Even though Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was covered in injuries, his smile at that moment was very pure. The two of them looked at each other and laughed loudly. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor raised his arm and tossed Celestial Emperor's head far out of Numinous Sky Hall. Raising the knife against the forbidden, out with the Emperor's head in his hand. Heaven Knife is truly heroic. I have finally comprehended the concept of his knife skills and knife path. Qin Mu was sore all over, but walked out of the hall with a smile. You are a big sicko, and your comprehension is too high. Grandpa Butcher had taught me for so many years before I comprehended the marvel of his knife skill. You walk the path of the sword, yet you could grasp the concept of his knife path. My comprehension is inferior to yours. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned around and said seriously, a person's comprehension will only increase as their horizons and experience grow. It's the same for wisdom as well. Your cultivation is still not high enough. When you reach my realm, you will be able to see through all profundities. In the future, you will not lose to me, but will only grow stronger. You could think of using the banquet of the celestial heavens to break the gods in my heart so I would be able to think straight, but I couldn't think of that. Why is Cult Master undervaluing himself? Qin Mu came to the throne of Celestial Emperor and pushed his headless corpse to the side before sitting down on the throne. He asked in astonishment, does Imperial Preceptor think I can surpass him, this straight line? You are the younger generation. If you can't surpass your seniors, wouldn't this world be too sad? On top of that, you are still the Overlord body. Qin Mu grew full of confidence and nodded. That's right too, I'm the Overlord body, so I'm definitely stronger than you. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's face blackened. Qin Mu shifted his butt to free a portion of the seat. Come, try this place where only the Celestial Emperor can sit. Imperial Preceptor hesitated. This isn't good, is it? Come, just sit. The sight from here is good. Okay. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor came to sit by his side, and the two of them looked at the scenery outside Numinous Sky Hall. After a moment, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said, the boundless world is under our eyes. In this position, one possesses boundless authority. The death of any world and any life lies with a single thought. Cult Master, have you ever had a desire for this kind of power? Qin Mu looked at him and asked in a leisurely manner, if I say yes, will you immediately get rid of me and save the Emperor from future trouble? Their gazes met, then Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked away. I won't. I will simply be on guard against you. He stood up and regained his calm expression. It was indifferent to the point that it looked like nothing could change it. And Qin Mu knew it. After experiencing the banquet at the Celestial Palace, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's Tao heart had entered a realm where not even gods and demons could predict his moves. His Tao heart had become indestructible. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor no longer had any more flaw in his Tao heart. Qin Mu stood up and walked out of the painting, seeming to have reaped his own gains. Only by breaking the despair in one's heart can one blaze with stronger hope and fighting spirit. The two of them walked out of the mural on the wall and stepped onto solid ground. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor looked back at the mural and saw that the palace was still standing. However, there were countless corpses of gods and devils everywhere. There were even some gods and devils shivering and hiding in corners with expressions of terror. Qin Mu went forward to erase the few brushes he had drawn, and the painting returned back to normal. He scratched his headband, said in puzzlement, "The painter that drew this painting had extremely high attainments and was not inferior to me. However, why is his painting missing a corner? With his attainments, he could have given life to the people in the painting and let everyone in the banquet move and interact. However, with the corner missing, the world inside is dead. It should have been chipped off," Eternal Peace Imperial preceptor said while walking out of the hall. "The battle outside should have ended already, right? It's time to let Xiongxiu reascend to her position of Palace Master and have West Earth come under Eternal Peace Empire." Qin Mu followed him out with a smile. "If you had the decree of the Emperor and read it now, stating that Xiongxiu is the true Heaven Palace Master, the effect would be much better." Eternal Peace Imperial preceptor took out an Imperial decree and said, "Before I left on this journey, I had asked the Emperor to write the Imperial decree. The Emperor is another old fox." Qin Mu sighed ruefully. After the two of them left the huge hall, the goddess suddenly moved in the painting. She looked around, and when she discovered that there was really no one around, she sneakily ran out of the painting. This video will end here.